Good afternoon. Welcome to those of you who've joined us here today at the Joseph Regenstein Library, and welcome to those of you who are joining us today for an event on artificial intelligence. My name is Thorsten Reimer. I'm the University Librarian and Dean of the University Library and will be the host today, but I promise I'll keep my remarks very short. Normally, when I open an event here, there's the need to either explain why about this topic and why about this topic now. I think we probably all know why this topic and why this topic now. So I just want to, as a very brief introduction, say that what we are going to do today is we'll introduce you both to the outcomes of a bit of research that a team from across the university has undertaken in the use of generative AI as part of a wider national project. And then in the second part, we hear about the latest artificial intelligence solution that the university has just deployed, PhoenixAI. And as you will find out, both of these things are related in that I think one part is partly responding to what we've learned from the study. This event today is recorded. For those of you who are online, if you want to ask questions later, please use the Q&A function. And for those of you in the room, please raise your hand and one of the team will come over with a microphone so you can ask the question. And it would be good for all of us to use microphones because that makes it much easier for the folks who are joining us online to hear us. Yeah, and with that, I now want to introduce our panelists in the sequence in which they are speaking. The first one is my colleague, David Bietila, who joined the University of Chicago Library a bit over 10 years ago as our web programming director. And he's worked on a vast range of projects, often with a particular expertise and focus on user experience. Then to my right is Taylor Ferris. She's our digital scholarship librarian who works with faculty and students on a range of digital scholarship projects and also oversees our DIY digitization studio. She's joined us about a year ago, and David and Taylor will talk to you on behalf of a wider university team about the findings of the research study. And then last but not least, it's my pleasure to introduce Kemal Badur, who's an Assistant Vice President and Chief Technology Officer for the university, has a lot of experience on complex technical projects and has already been a very strong partner for the library as we've been looking into a whole range of wider digital infrastructure projects. And with that introduction out of the way, I'm now handing over to David.
Thank you, Torsten, for that introduction. So what Taylor and I will be talking about today are findings from a study that we participated in this last year. The study was called the Making AI Generative study. We were one of 19 campuses to participate in this. It was coordinated by Ithaca S&R, which is a not-for-profit that conducts research in the higher ed sector. So we'll be speaking about the findings from the 12 interviews that we did here on the UChicago campus. There were many more done in the project overall, and Ithaca is working on a report on the overall study findings. So the 12 participants we had from UChicago consisted of tenure-track faculty, contract faculty, and lecturers. We were able to recruit participants in fields in the humanities, social sciences, and physical sciences. And the participants we found had a range of experience with AI. We had people who were relatively unfamiliar, and we had people who had been following AI for years and were quite involved in the field. So there's a relatively even breakdown in experience. We probably had a bias toward recruiting people who were more engaged with AI in their work just because of the way that the nominations and invitations kind of worked for this study. But there were definitely a range of opinions, feelings about AI. Not everyone was positively disposed to it by any means. For the study consisted of interviews. So the interviews were 30 to 60 minutes, depending on what kind of responses that the participant had. The script included questions about the participants' general knowledge and attitudes toward AI. any use that they had had for AI or experimentation they'd had with AI in their research and teaching activities, and their thoughts about the resources and support that were available on campus regarding use of AI. These studies or these interviews were all conducted in May and June of this year, so this was before the PhoenixAI platform was available. So I'll start by describing some of the impressions we heard about AI. Participants ranged from dubious about the prospects of AI to cautiously optimistic. One concern a number of participants had was in navigating the hype around AI. Participants observed that they heard a number of overblown claims about AI, and while they were certain that AI would have some kind of impact on their field, and it would have real applications, it was hard at this moment to discern which claims were overblown and which were more uninvested claims that were made. A number of participants mentioned the amount of time it was taking to get familiar with AI, to pick up a skill like prompt engineering, for example. Because AI is in a relatively early state, it required, a lot of participants mentioned it required them like direct experimentation to learn how to do things with it. Just the tutorials and resources out there for learning it quickly either did not exist or they could not find them easily. They mentioned that this experimentation came at a cost of trying to balance it with work, with time they could be using on other kinds of work, so on research, on teaching, on committee work. And that they felt like there was a risk that whatever they learned would immediately be out of date as new platforms emerged, or as new applications emerged for AI. We followed that up by asking participants about what kind of impact AI was having on their field. And participants described confusion and anxiety most frequently among their peers. Just uncertainty about how AI was going to impact each field and what were the important things to learn about it. The most frequent thing we heard, or the most frequent suggestion we heard from participants, was just a desire that their colleagues would engage more with AI, whether through direct experimentation or by seeking out formal training regarding AI. There was a widespread interest in having more forums readily available for discussions about AI, and whether there was interest in having these both cover technical developments and functional developments in AI, and also a place to meet with colleagues across disciplines to discuss social and ethical implications of AI. Participants reported a number of things they regarded as clear problems with using AI. The most frequently mentioned aspect was the superficiality of analysis that they often encountered with AI. When posed with something like an essay prompt, AI would often respond with flowery language, about that subject, but it would have little underlying substance to it. And many feared that their students would be lured by the potential here and not dig deeper in their own analysis. A number of participants encountered outright hallucinations and inaccuracies when working with AI. Many participants described encountering hallucinated citations during their work with AI, as well as other kinds of incorrect facts being returned. Participants observed the tendency of AI to express bias in a number of circumstances, including racial and gender biases. This was attributed both to biases in the training data itself used to produce AI and due to the predictive nature of AI algorithms, which could reinforce biases that were present in that training data. Other kinds of ethical issues were mentioned in the interviews, including concern about how AI would handle sensitive information like human subjects data, and the feeling that it was lagging behind field work standards in most areas and requirements like FERPA. There was concern more broadly in how AI would deal with data privacy overall. If a data set were uploaded for work with AI, who would be able to see that if it was a corporate AI platform? And finally, there were ecological and social concerns about the impact of AI as well. Finally, I'm going to talk about the applications that our participants had for AI in their research process. In this area, we were struck by the great diversity of use cases that people had come up with for AI applications. Many of these, especially the ones toward the end, were singular to just one or two users. So we really saw different approaches with each person we talked to. But overall, the most common one was using AI to synthesize secondary literature, either to use it for a function like producing literature reviews on a given topic, or to refresh one's knowledge of a known area, perhaps by summarizing a specified set of texts. There was a lot of interest in using AI for analyzing data sets. What was particularly noted was the capability of AI for analyzing large data sets and allowing for working with data sets of a size that perhaps one might not otherwise have had time or money to allow for. A lot of the participants were interested in using AI to generate visualizations and to produce software code. Many people found AI could produce graphs and charts very quickly and easily. And even if it was wrong the first time, it was very easy to iterate on these until a fitting chart was produced. People observed that this had a democratizing effect, or they thought it might have a democratizing effect on access to coding and programming tasks, that it suddenly became possible to produce scripts and code for data cleanup, data analysis, and other tasks, even without coding background. Other applications that we heard mentioned were using AI for brainstorming. One participant mentioned having speech conversations with an AI tool to flesh out ideas that he was working on. A number of people used it for notes, processing notes and producing outlines. In one case, one participant mentioned feeding it notes from dozens of student projects that they were supervising and having it organize those and feed them back in a more usable form. There was a lot of interest in automatic translation and transcription potential for AI, and participants noted that auto translation could potentially open up new troves of archival documents that might have been out of reach for their research otherwise. Finally, we heard about some more specialized cases. There were those who were developing bespoke AIs, training it with sources within a given field, more curated sources, and those who are looking at running AI for different kinds of simulations, either simulations of industries or historical simulations, and really kind of testing the boundaries of what it could be applied for. So with that, I'll turn it over to Taylor to talk about what we heard about AI in the classroom.
Yeah, so as David mentioned, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about how AI came up in the classroom. So I'm going to start with a conversation on academic integrity because it came up quite a bit, not only in the interviews, but just around campus. So there were pretty varied levels of concern relating to cheating or other violations of the academic honor code. Most interviewees mentioned it as a potential place that might get increased because of the availability of AI tools. Many also acknowledge cheating itself is not a new issue. And then a lot of the strategies that help mitigate cheating now can be helped or can help with mitigating cheating for assignments in the advent of these new tools. That being said, almost all participants said that AI had made them reflect on their assignments, especially whether they were process-oriented or product-oriented, the latter of which being much easier to cheat on or harder to detect. And these reflections were also went out to broader reflections on the importance of a UChicago education, the importance of liberal arts education and interdisciplinary inquiry. Our participants had a lot of really great things to say about that, and that this type of education still helps our students prepare for approaching new ideas and critically engaging with them. And often the outputs of these reflections was just to talk to their students directly about this, right? Having honest conversations with students about the goals of each assignment and what students stand to lose when they take shortcuts on these assignments. The other output of a lot of these reflections was coming up with a syllabus policy or a statement at the beginning of a syllabus outlining what constituted acceptable use. And these approaches varied not only between instructor and instructor, but also from class to class. Instructors might choose a more lenient policy for students in more advanced classes who have the capacity to critically evaluate the outputs of generative AI tools, but choose to have a stricter policy for students in intro classes, as there isn't enough information for students to be able to see when AI is hallucinating. The policies themselves, there was a huge range. They ranged from banning AI pretty much entirely to allowing it for almost all activities in class. Most were somewhere in the middle, allowing AI for certain activities such as brainstorming or generating examples, but not for the actual writing process. And I mention writing because it was a big area of engagement within these interviews, especially in the social sciences and humanities disciplines. So one major trend of these interviews was the reevaluation of the essay, particularly the 4 to 5 page paper. And no instructor that we spoke to decided to get rid of these assignments, rather to just tweak their approaches to them. So one of those approaches was, again, having those conversations with students, talking about the goals and what skills they expected students to get from the assignment. Others included scaffolding writing assignments and having those periodic check-ins, seeing where students had outlined and then drafts, which allowed instructors to get a feel for the style of writing of students, as well as checking in and making sure that there wasn't any red flags for a student not really understanding the material or having issues with writing itself due to language barriers. Anecdotally, instructors found that it really was the students who were having trouble already in the class or having issues with the writing process that were more likely to engage and use generative AI. So being able to catch that early was key in helping to kind of dissuade students from using this and acknowledging that you can build those skills without relying on these tools. Finally, when it came to writing assignments, another approach that was used was requiring a reflection. Pretty much everyone who allowed for AI during the writing process did have some sort of reflection built in, to have students talk about how they used AI, if they would do it again, and what that process was like. This was very successful for the people who implemented it, and some instructors mentioned that they might continue to require reflections, even for assignments that they don't allow AI intervention on. As David mentioned, there absolutely is a reason to use AI for research and brainstorming, or people can do it. We didn't see that as much in the classroom, probably due to the fact that students don't have subject matter expertise and they can't really evaluate the outputs. But AI can be helpful in example generation and describing basic concepts, despite the fact hallucination can still be a pretty major issue. Finally, before talking about how this came up in the more computational classes, other examples of use for AI in the class in humanities and social science classes included using AI to generate writing examples for students to critique. Instructors found students were more willing to critique writing samples generated by AI because they weren't afraid of hurting its feelings. Also using AI to play a role, such as a student to explain a concept to or imitating famous writers or figures, and then also studying the bias in AI responses themselves. So when it came to AI in design and computational classes, the focus was primarily on coding. And there was pretty much general agreement that there is utility in having students work through coding exercises on their own, at least initially. Part of that friction, that difficulty doing coding assignments is practice. And some believed that after that initial practice period, AI can be very helpful for catching basic syntax errors once those basic concepts are hammered out. A big through line for the programming or the computational classes was really determining which tasks were practice and which could be automated. So which tasks would be helpful for students to kind of get some practice with. And the other aspect would be, was the class meant to teach programming, or was programming not the primary goal, but a helpful skill to have in analysis? As David mentioned, AI assistance in coding can be sort of an equalizing and democratizing thing for students or even faculty and staff that don't have the experience. I'm going to finish off with how some of our participants talked about their hopes for the future and their view of the university's response so far. I do want to acknowledge that these interviews happened before PhoenixAI was rolled out and also before the generative AI website went live. So it is our hope that both of those things are in some way a response to these hopes for the future. There was a desire for a centralized website for resources on AI, just as a place to find out where workshops were being held, what workshops were being held, and a general contact to start asking questions. And there was also a indication of a greater need for AI literacy training across campus. As David mentioned, getting up to speed with using AI can take a lot of time, and instructors who wanted to use these in the class often found that they had to take time out of the class to teach students how to effectively use AI, which did take out time from teaching content of the class. So the hope would be that AI literacy training could help level the playing field and help to meet that gap and close that gap in knowledge. Other recommendations really did kind of fall into three major bins. One of them was a repository of assignments or use cases. So instructors who'd be interested in using AI in the future could look at examples. Others would be tool tutorials and charts to define the differences between tools, which tools might be better for certain activities and others. And then finally, again, more workshops and training, not just for beginners, but also discussing advanced topics such as how to find data to train your own model. And with that, I am going to leave it up for questions. We have about 5 minutes for questions, and then Kemal will give his, yes.
I noticed in one of the first slides that
If we could just wait for the, yeah.
Oh, I think
We've got people online, so the online people need to hear you too.
Hi. I noticed that in one of your first slides, the biological sciences was not included in the faculty pool. Was that a typo, or why were they not included?
We tried to get basically as broad of a range as we could, and just the faculty or the instructors nominated in biological sciences, either the scheduling did not work out, or we didn't get responses from the folks that were invited. So ideally, we would have had representation there.
You mentioned twice the AI is democratizing itself. The earlier was with coding. What are the consequences, do you think, of democratizing in the classroom with your students' education?
Sure. I mean, so the democratization of AI, obviously one of the consequences would be potentially more use of AI. The hope would be that more students would have access to the paid models, so there isn't unequal access. But obviously that could cause more use, which depending upon who you ask, could be a negative or a positive. Is that?
Can I maybe also add something? I think that I feel that in some cases this has already happened. We need to look differently at what we're testing and assessing. If there are certain things that you might maybe have used in passing in a class that you've been assessed on, and you can now get an AI to do this in 20 seconds, then the question is it still valuable to test this, or is it more valuable to maybe shift the educational model? So there is a question, I think, about access to AI and what that means. There is one about enabling students to do things that they couldn't have done in the same way. But I think this also raises some really interesting questions about what do we assess and what tasks maybe do we no longer want to assess or want to assess in a very different way.
Can I ask a follow-up question? In regards to access to AI, I know this is the initial beta version, and I know in Boyd's email to the college's undergraduates, he mentioned that there's going to be future versions coming out to the undergraduates. Are you going to be storing students' data within PhoenixAI? And if that data is stored, how are you going to be using it to build future versions of PhoenixAI?
I'm going to take that question. I think you're asking me. So this is going to be later in my slides as well. During the design phase of this, we talked about privacy and data a lot, and we have very strict guardrails around how data is going to be used for anything. We don't plan to train our own models at this point. We have not seen any value in trying to do better than GPT-4 or Claude or anything like that. So we don't believe there's value in that. So we're not going to use student data or any data to train. We're also not going to make the data of your interactions as a student or faculty or staff available to anyone who wants to look at it. There are guidance. We have policies around the privacy of those interactions on any technology system or anything that you do, and we're going to protect them accordingly. So there is no plan to use the data, and we will, use it in the sense like we need to know what people are, we need to know what the performance of the system is, we need to know what the load is, but we don't need to know what you are doing, what you're asking to do those things. So we have no interest in looking at those things. And if somebody wants to look at them, they need to go through a very rigorous process, I'm going to call it, to get access to them.
We have one more question from the room and then one online, and then we can move on.
I hate to do this, more of a comment than a question. Jeffrey Tharson, I'm the Associate Director of Technology in the Humanities. We have dozens of assignments and all kinds of tutorials that we'd like to offer, actually, and we should work. I say this publicly because I think it's not just those of us who are teaching these things regularly that need to be contributing these things. We want assignments from biological sciences, from the physical sciences, very much so, partly because what we've seen is that the methods created in the hard sciences can often be applied to other disciplines. If you look at the way that DNA analysis evolved into now textual analysis, there's a very clear process there. So while we can offer certainly everything that we're doing, including workshops and trainings, what we'd really like to see is this be university-wide. Do you see that, Taylor? Is that part of the plan?
To have university, I mean, so the generative AI website is up. So I'm not personally the person in control of that one, but the hope is, yes, that we would be propagating all of the information around what's going on campus so people can learn about how much is being done all around campus and all the great work.
So we have one question online from an anonymous attendee who asked, was there outreach to career services? Students are frequently seeking information on using AI in job search and preparation. Many career services groups are in the process of creating programming and best practices.
In regards to the study, the Making AI Generative study, no, it was just the scope of the study was for instructors and researchers, faculty. So I think there's definitely room for further examinations of how AI could be used for students specifically, and for other kinds of applications. And I hope people pick up those studies and carry them out.
Yeah, we have not talked to anybody at career services either. I'm kind of ashamed because I have friends who do that. I should have thought about reaching out to them. All right, so I think it's now my turn. Torsten, thank you so much for inviting me. My plan is to do a very short introduction to the tool. I'm hoping, because you guys are sitting in a session about AI and you got Kevin's emails, you will have tried this already, so you don't need to be told how to use it or anything like that. But I want to give some background and hopefully touch on some of the points that were discussed before. We did not follow the study. I mean, we participated in this study. Some of my colleagues worked on the study, but I wasn't part of it. But I think we talked to the same people or the same kind of people, because what we did really is informed by everything that was discussed before. So I'm going to talk about, what this thing is, what we learned so far from having run it exactly a month now in production, and what we are planning to do next. And we'll have some slides to talk about, what it looks like. So what is this thing in the first place? It's just a chat interface built on top of Microsoft's Azure platform using OpenAI's GPT-4o model. We did not do anything much more fancy than that. I'm going to touch on this later. Some people assume that we did a lot more than we did, but we did not. The goal here was to achieve these three objectives that we have here. We want to offer privacy and security. We do not want people to be required or incentivized to go use some free tool that will take their data and do with it what they will. We don't want them to leak patient data, proprietary data, whatever it is. We want those things to stay inside the university, and we wanted to have a tool to do that with. Equity and free access. Again, I've been talking to people about AI ever since ChatGPT came out, and I've heard faculty say, some instructors say, of course, I'm going to tell my students to go pay the $20 a month for their class. Why would I not? And some others who were completely not comfortable doing that. And we didn't want that to be the barrier, or worse, we didn't want to create a situation where the students or the staff or whoever who can pay that $20 a month would do better than the others who couldn't. And that's not a sustainable situation. And we felt everybody having equal access to what is a top of the line tool is the right way to go. And accessibility, this is something that we really want to emphasize. When we were doing our research, none of the tools that were available to users online had any accessibility features. They were not compatible with screen readers, with devices, assistive devices, and we know how to build these things. This is now a known, art to build accessible web tools, and we want to build that into this as well to make sure that there was this one less barrier to access and the benefit of these tools. So this is a screenshot. This is one of, I'm showing this here for those of you who haven't tried it. Again, it's a chat interface. If you tried other ones, you'll see there is on the history, on the left, there's a history where you can go to your previous interactions. It will do all sorts of goofy stuff for you. Again, this is math, because I was trying to help my kid with something, and I wanted to use it this way. Here, I want to highlight a little piece. This little paperclip button on the side allows you to upload files. Not all kinds of files, but you can give it a PDF file. We can get it to look at that PDF for you and summarize it for you, do something else. So that's a feature that's not super obvious, and we want to highlight it here. The other thing that I think is really interesting that is not obvious in the interface, when you click on the top right on your initials, you will get a customized chat option. And in that customized chat, you can instruct it about how to behave. So in my case, I really want it to be, short. I don't like long answers. And so I'm telling it to be concise and, ground things in facts is really helpful. I find it really helpful. I also do this little thing here when I'm asking it for a confidence score, when it's giving me an answer about a fact. And that's a really interesting outcome sometimes. So you'll see here, this is something strange that I wanted to ask it because somebody mentioned Xerxes as a potential name for something. And I said, what do people of Greece think of Xerxes? Because I don't think they have great feelings. And it came an answer about like, yeah, there is some history there. But at the end, it says only 85%. And trust me, it's usually at 95% plus in confidence. So in this case, it was able to say, I'm not sure. So don't take this, don't take this very seriously, maybe. 85 is still high. I mean, it would be like a B in normal human terms, but it's again something interesting you can do. This is just an example of how you can instruct it to work in the way you want rather than whatever comes out of the box. The Gen AI website came up a lot, several times in the previous discussion. I really would encourage everyone to go visit it. We have a link to it from the PhoenixAI interface as well. This is where we really want people to go to learn, to get resources, to find others who are doing interesting things. We have this, material about, how prompts work. We have product comparisons to talk about how the different tools work. We have news and events, so you can see news about AI around the campus. You can see events. I'm sorry, that's below the fold. I couldn't get it on the slide. So this event actually is on that website. So we're hoping that people can use that site to go learn about what's happening on campus, to learn from each other, to engage with each other, and to again be more comfortable with using these things. So this is a really important thing, and we are very invested in this site, and we're going to continue to update it. So I think it's a really important tool for people to be aware of. This is just for the really nerdy people in the audience. This is how it's built. These slides will be available later. This can tell you how exactly we are doing what we are doing, but I'm gonna move on from this because I don't think it's interesting to most of you in the room. So what have we learned so far in this month that we have been running this? About 10% of eligible users have used it. This is about 3,500 users. And it's kind of on the low end. And we were estimating a range when we were building this to figure out, how much, it would cost, what kind of traction we would get. This is kind of on the low end, but we didn't advertise it very much. And there is certainly the hesitancy that, we heard already. And so we are not surprised by it, but we also need to make sure that people are more aware of it. They are more comfortable and all that. We had some cost controls that we put in place. Because I don't know if you read about this stuff, but it's really expensive to run these things, and they can get very expensive very quickly. Because we don't have an unlimited budget, we wanted to make sure that we had controls in place to limit that. They are working very well. We're actually talking about removing some of them to make the tool more capable in some, arcane ways. So that's been really helpful. The other thing is, pretty much everyone seems to assume that the bot should know the university very well. Like where to park, who is the current CFO, who was hired last week. And we didn't do that. There is no training involved here. We didn't put any special university data. It knows about the university, whatever was on the internet by April 2023, I think, or August, whatever the cutoff date is. So it's a lot, but it's not, current information that it can go look up for you. So we're going to work on this as well. We're going to add more university data and other kinds of interesting data that we want to inform its answers by, but that's an interesting observation. There is also the assumption, this came up in the question from the audience earlier, we're not taking data and training the model to make it better. The interactions come from that's what, AI companies want to do. I don't know if all of them are actually doing it. They want to use the interactions of the users to keep training their models. We're not doing that. So the thing you're interacting with today is the same thing you're going to interact with tomorrow, because it's not going to improve because we took your stuff and did something with that. There is, we heard from faculty in BST, we heard from, regular users who felt very skittish about giving their data to some random internet company, about how good it is that they can trust that the university is going to handle that now instead of some random people on the internet who really would like to make money. So that, I think it's really good to have that feedback. It's exactly what we're shooting for. And I'm hoping a lot of more people will appreciate that. And the final thing here is, of course, we have lots of researchers, very enterprising people. They want to build their own tools. They want to build their own apps. They are not satisfied with just having the chat interface where they can talk at the thing. They want to build things. So next steps, we're going to actually start supporting that kind of work as well. So what is next? This is, a small glimpse into our roadmap. Custom GPTs are a function that we are building right now. We're hoping to make it available in the next couple of weeks. This is, and if you can read this example on the side here, you can create a custom version of this, or of the bot, that you can inform with data. So here you will see that there is a knowledge section down here. This is data you can upload to the bot, and it will use it to answer your questions. And you can instruct it to act in a certain way, act as my personal assistant, act as a TA for this class, or act as a, somebody who's going to help me navigate my trip to Switzerland, whatever you want to do. And then it will only act within those parameters and become more pointed, if you will, than this generalist that we are offering in the standard version. Manage the API service. This is about the tools and apps for people. We're going to we have devised a way to give secure access to the backend models themselves. So if somebody wants to build their own custom bot, or somebody wants to feed it 5,000 documents at a time, or interact with it programmatically, they will be able to do that in the same secure environment that we have built for PhoenixAI, which we believe is going to be, again, a big win for the research community, especially to get to that capability. Our security and privacy teams are conducting a HIPAA privacy review. This will hopefully, when concluded, allow clinical use of the tool, so that especially BST people, will be able to use this in any way they want. It's a tough role. I mean, we trust that it's secure and private, but compliance is a different story. So we're trying to get to that as well, in collaboration with the medical center as well. So that's hopefully coming in the near future. That will make it better for everyone. And then we have, of course, this is not the only AI product. We have many, many others that we have to deal with, I'm going to say. So Microsoft Copilot is one of them. We're going to make it available to the university community roughly at the same time as the custom GPT thing I mentioned. That's a search engine powered by AI. It's kind of the way to think about it. And we'll save some communication to explain what it is and how you can use it. Box AI, this is integrated into the Box storage platform. It will allow you to engage with documents. So you can ask it to summarize a PDF you have there, or take a Word document and create a PowerPoint out of it, and stuff like that. And Box is also a very, highly secure and private environment. Enabling that over there will allow us to do something different. But engaging with the content we have on Box is valuable. The university has 3 petabytes of data on Box. So a lot of our estate is actually living there. Lots of our users are very comfortable with it. So being able to offer something like that built into Box is going to be a benefit. And finally, there is another tool called Microsoft Copilot Studio. Everything Microsoft does has to be called Copilot. It's a law, just what we have to live with. Copilot Studio is an environment where you can build chatbots and other tools using simple workflows that then can connect to other data sources. That's another interesting way to build for builders. It's an interesting way to deal with the different issues they want to tackle. So we're going to make it available as well. What is next in terms of beyond these features? We're hiring some grad students to work on the tool and on AI in general. It turns out we have lots of master students in data science and technology who are eager to work on AI things. And we're hiring them right now. So I'm hoping to have a small group of them that can help us both explore different features, work with the people who are asking us for different things, and both to help our teams gain expertise and also leverage the skills that we have in the community. We're thinking of building a local system that can do things with open source models. That's going to be pretty small. I mean, we're not buying dozens of GPUs and servers to do this, but we want to be able to try this as well to see how we can actually handle this kind of work and support this without having to go to the cloud or trusting our really sensitive data to someone else, for example. That will be an interesting question. We're building a roadmap. We've been talking to the community a lot. There is a lot of interest, a lot of different things that people want. So we're trying to prioritize those things, figure out what it will take to build them. And from there, we're hoping that within the next year, we can add a lot more features and a lot more functionality, but we want to do it informed by what people want rather than, whatever I think is a good idea. I have lots of great ideas, but it's really not what should be driving how what we provide to the community. And then to touch on the training and education parts of this, I heard this from a lot of people. People like to talk to each other. I mean, it came up in the audience already. So I'm hoping to build some kind of community of practice where people can talk to each other. I'm part of something already like this already with other universities and a consortium called Internet 2. We meet monthly. Somebody from some university stands up and talks about how they did something or the other and going into real technical detail. It's a great way for people who are trying these things out to learn from each other. And so I'm hoping we can do something like that here, where people who are interested in solutions can come talk about, what they need. People who are building solutions can come describe how they build something. And that way, again, we're building some, capabilities inside the campus that can, drive innovation. And training and education, we have an academic technologies team that is working to develop content for instructors. We're working with CCTL and libraries. We're really hoping to, now that we have a tool available, we're really hoping to build more engagement with the community, engagement with scholars to make sure that they understand what this tool and others can do and use effectively. And this is my last slide. You can look at this later. This addresses the privacy questions that come up regularly, just like they did here before. Look at those policies. Look at what we are, following. I'm hoping this will give reassurances to everyone in the community that we take your privacy and security very seriously, and we are not going to just, take this data and go do, internet startup things. I'm going to call them. We're here to protect you. We're here to serve you. And that's what we are trying to do. And this is the end of my slides.
Thank you very much. We have 6 questions that have come in online while you've been speaking. So what I'll do is I'll take the first 2, then come to the room, then take another 2 and go backwards and forwards a little bit. So the first of our online questions is, once you customize chat with your preferences, do those carry through for all chats or do they have to be repeated for each use?
So the new tool that we are building is going to show up on your left bar as a separate thing you can talk to. So I have a workshop finder, for example. Then there's going to be a bookmark, if you will, to the workshop finder, and every time I want to go to it, I'll click on that and go to that.
Okay. And the next question is, do the chat customizations for confidence in the answer help with hallucinations?
I don't think they do necessarily, but when I see something below 90%, it makes me think about it a little bit harder. And sometimes when that explanation actually, when I ask it a very fact-based question, like who won Super Bowl 49, for example, it will say 99% plus. This is a well-documented fact. I don't need to worry about it too much. But when you ask who's the best singer in the world, it will give you some examples, but then it will say, this is an opinion-based thing. There is no confidence level in this. So I think it's more of a parlor trick, but it gives me a little bit of a oh, I should pause and think about this for a little bit. So I find that an interesting thing to add at the end of it.
Any questions from the room? If not, I can go back to,
Hello, thank you for the presentation. With the custom GPTs and providing knowledge bases, databases, could we, for example, in principle, provide a whole database of the books at the library and remove the hallucinations on citations or book recommendations that the GPT will provide?
So I'm not the right person to answer this question, but you're the one I have. I'm the one you have. So I'm going to try. So what you can do with data like that is called grounding. And what it's supposed to mean is you're going to prevent it from taking a flight, making things up too badly. So that's certainly a thing. So for example, I built this workshop finder tool. I like going to random workshops, and I built this thing to scrape the different sites where we post workshops in different departments, and I can ask it, tell me what's happening in AI in the next month. So it will only look at that document I gave it and say, these are things that are happening. It's not going to go make up. Thorsten is going to talk about AI on, March 21st, and he's going to say these things because, it's going to hallucinate that. So it will not do that in that context. But there is a limit to how well that grounding works. But by their nature, these tools, they have no sense of a fact. They have no sense of truth. And if you push it enough, it will start hallucinating things because, you asked enough things to make them go there. So there are ways to prevent that, but they're not foolproof. And I wouldn't want anybody to feel like, yes, because we have given it all the facts we have, the 10 million volumes we have.
13 and a half, if you
Okay.
count digital as well.
Yes, so just because we give them all those things, they're not going to become really, really truthful. It's just not going to work that way. But it certainly will be easier to go question those sources, do work based on them. That's the idea here. It's not to completely eliminate hallucinations.
If I can maybe add to this, I mean, one practical issue, obviously, is that we don't have all these 13.5 million volumes digitized, although some are. Recently, when I talked to a faculty member about something related, they said, ooh, wouldn't there be a great possibility to have a future version of this where we put all the content that the university has, not just the library material, and we would actually enable this tool to learn from all the faculty and students, and that over time we would create a very UChicago specific AI that would sort of pick up a bit of the culture and how we work and learn from the best. And couldn't this be a great tool in the future for recruiting new faculty and students by having an AI that sort of culturally, intellectually is really built on what we do in the university, which I think is an interesting experiment. It has a whole host of issues in it, including like everyone would have to agree that all their interactions go into training the model and so on. But I think now that we have such a tool and we could experiment, these would be some questions that I think we could look into, like what content do we want to throw in and how much do we want to allow it to learn from all the great minds we have at this university. So I think it would be an interesting research project. It could perhaps also be an interesting wider project to think about what we want our knowledge infrastructure to look like.
So that's the person you talked to was not called Steve Cron by accident. No?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Okay,
No.
well, I'm gonna out him because I was talking to another researcher from ESC named Steve Cron, and his idea was he's got a large lab, lots of students do lots of different things, and he has a very hard time getting from results to publication because he doesn't have time to work with all of them individually, criticize their findings or edit their papers and all that. And he wants to build a Steve bot 3000, they're calling it, where they can feed a small model, not a large one, the papers that the lab generated, all the other writing that he has done, so that a student with a finished experiment or a draft of an experiment can go and give it to the bot, and the bot will act like the PI and say, okay, you did not do this way, this is the way you should write this thing, or you explain this result better. And they think there is a bet about having a very small model that they can run locally instead of somewhere crazy, that can be very factful, grounded in the facts of that lab's work, in the style of that lab, and that will then help drive faster time to science because they can push things more quickly because they are not relying on one person managing everything. It's a fascinating idea, and they are actually starting a project right now that I'm somewhat helping them with. But again, this is the kind of creativity. I mean, I only got to talk to them because they heard about PhoenixAI and what we were doing, and they came out and they want to talk. So this is what we are trying to encourage people to think about, all sorts of interesting ideas, working with us, working with each other to figure them out. And down the line, it would be amazing if we can build that bot for this researcher and maybe for others too, with the consent and opt-in, obviously, and come up with a way to make the parts of science that are hard easier for people and make the interesting parts, more rewarding or, I don't know, easier to get to.
Our next online question is slightly related to that topic, which is regarding the option to upload a file to PhoenixAI. What are the guardrails in place, especially regarding copyrighted material? And is the file data stored or catalogued?
So just like with everything else, the user is responsible for the, for compliance with whatever, copyright or any other regulation they need to abide by. We're not monitoring things. We're not going to say, oh, this is a song that is, by Beyonce, you cannot upload this. Or this paper is from this journal, we cannot upload it here. And so people need to keep that in mind. We're not policing anything. The data is not retained, the data is not monitored. We retain it for the history feature. So if you tried it, you will notice that you can go back to something you did last week, click on it and continue talking about it. So to keep that state awareness, we need to retain the data, but we're not looking at that data. It's only there for the convenience of the user. And one of the things that we are looking at is to disable that for certain use cases. You can already delete stuff. You can say, this interaction I don't want to keep around anymore, and you can get rid of it and it will get deleted. We are also thinking of doing creating ways for people to completely opt out of the history so that there is nothing is retained. But right now we chose to go with the convenience of having it available rather than getting rid of it completely. But again, we're not looking at it. And if somebody does want to look at it, they need to go figure out the privacy policy I had in my last slide. If you can go look at that, it will tell you exactly what it would take to look at any content that we have.
Thank you. Our next online question is, are there any plans to add Claude AI as an option for the AI flavor?
I like the AI flavor. Yeah, we are looking at different options. So one feature that's on our roadmap is to allow multiple models. We don't know which ones yet. It will depend on what users need, how differentiated they are from the one that we already have, and all of that. Claude, I will, admit, is one of the top models out there, and it's supposed to do certain things better or, in different ways. So as you figure out how to do the multiple models, it's a matter of the interface. How do we build it in an interface to make it easy to understand? How do we make sure that it's secure when we are talking to a completely different thing in the back end? Once we have solved those issues, we will figure out how to add them, how to add these things. And yes, Claude is on the list.
Questions from the room before I carry on with the online questions? No. Oh, no.
Meet you halfway. Great. I just wanted to clarify so that I understand how it's working. So I've had fun working with PhoenixAI in kind of a programming context, actually for my own research. Mm-hmm. And I want to find out if I wasted a Saturday morning is basically what I'm wanting to find out. Because I was working on, I had some code in I'll just say I had some code that was in R. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I wonder if PhoenixAI can translate this into Stata. Okay. So I took the code, copied it into it, and said, can you make this into Stata? And it did, and I can immediately tell that it was doing some stuff wrong. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to rate it. So I was saying, no, on this line, you did this wrong. And then it would say, oh, I'm sorry. The correct one is this, right? And so, well, I did this so much that eventually I reached the limit, and it said you have to wait till like midnight to do it again, because that's how many questions I was having to troubleshoot. But it was eventually getting the code right. Mm-hmm. But help me to know if that means now the next time I go to it, it doesn't know everything I just taught it. Is that what you were saying?
So you taught it something in the context of that thread that you were doing. If you were to click on new chat and start talking about something else, all that is gone. All that is, yeah, so it hasn't learned how to do Stata better because you spent that Saturday morning. You fix that code, but next time you try to do something, it will need the same kind of hand-holding, if you will.
But if I went back to that same conversation, if I went back to that same conversation, it will still retain what I taught
to some extent. I mean, I don't think the entire room wants to hear about context window size, but I can tell you about it later. There is a limit to how much it will retain, because you cannot have it retain the entire history of your discussion as it gets, especially up to like 50. If you reach 50 prompts, that's an immense amount of information you exchange with it. It will not be able to retain all that stuff unless you remind it every time you give it a new prompt. You can do that too, but there are better ways to write code than that. Okay, so the red came up for the second time. I think we're done.
From the room. We do have 2 online, but we can always send them to you and we can share the written answers to those after the session.
Best practices right now, we find that for low-level programming, it gets it right out of the box about 1 in 5 times. So rather than going through and editing each line that it gets wrong, just regenerate. See if it gets it right. If it fails again, regenerate. Usually our failure rate is about 4 in 5 right now. The same is true for the grounding question. We're recommending that folks not use the LLM to produce output, but have it write code. The code then reads the data source. That code is solid and reproducible and provides a solid output only from the data source and solves the hallucination issue. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this. I know there are a lot more questions and comments, and I think this already spurred some interesting ideas. So this is going to be a topic that's going to stay with us for a while. I think there are also some interesting things coming out of the report that we want to follow up, probably including some recommendations that we'll want to make. And so there will be ongoing discussion on these topics. But we're now, at least for today, out of time. So I'd like to thank you all for your time, whether you're online or in the room. And I think before we close, we should give all our speakers a round of applause. Thank you again.